So this is a very important video where I'm going to show you a couple of important differences that you need to be aware about as you go forward. So when this course was originally made, we used a different IDE than Cloud9. We used Nitrous, okay? And you can get to Nitrous by going to nitrous.io. Now, what happened is in April and May of 2015, Nitrous changed their software completely, and they kind of rebuilt their IDE from scratch. So they've got this whole different IDE from what we were using in our course here. So what they did is the original version of Nitrous, as you can see right here, has been changed to what they call Nitrous Lite, and they're no longer going to support it as of July 1st, 2015. So I'm going to go over here to lite.nitrous.io, and I'm going to log in so that you can kind of see the differences. I'm going to point out just the things you need to be aware of so that you can keep coding just fine in Cloud9. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in to Nitrous here. And once I log in, I'm kind of taken to this dashboard screen. So throughout the course, you'll see me come back to this screen quite a bit, and it's called the boxes screen, actually. And right here, you'll see this start button that I use to kind of turn on this box, okay? So right there, I want to point out something interesting for you. In Cloud9, I'm going to sign in here. You'll see I'm at a dashboard type screen again right here when I sign in, but you'll see it's called workspaces. So in Cloud9, when you see workspaces here, that's pretty much the same thing as Nitrous where you have boxes here. And you can kind of create a new box if you want to have multiple kind of workspaces. But the problem with Nitrous is that with the free account, you can only have one box anyway. And for the purpose of this course, you won't need to create an additional workspace in Cloud9. You can do everything all inside one workspace. So I'm going to go ahead and start this box up and then jump into our IDE in Nitrous, just so I can point out a few more differences for you. So I'm going to click IDE right here. And here we go. This is the Nitrous interface. So anytime in the course when you see me click that IDE button, all I'm doing is going into my workspace, into the actual IDE here. So likewise in Cloud9, you can do the same thing as when you log in, you've got your workspaces here. You can think of these as boxes, and you simply click on this open button to get inside. Now before I do that, you can actually look, if you click on the tile itself, you'll see some nice information about your actual box itself or workspace. So I'm going to go ahead and click open from here, and we'll be logged in to a very similar interface here in Cloud9. So there's only one main difference that you need to be aware of between Nitrous and Cloud9. And before I get to that, I just want to touch on a couple of subtle interface differences just so that you feel really comfortable working in Cloud9 or any other IDE for that matter. So one thing you'll notice is that here in the file system, we've got this root folder in Nitrous, and then there's this workspace folder where we put all of our Rails projects inside there. So throughout this course, you're going to create multiple Rails projects, and you're going to put them all inside of this workspace folder, or you'll see me do that here in Nitrous. Now, the only subtle difference is that in Cloud9, this folder right here that we named in the last video, that essentially is the same thing as the workspace folder right there, okay? So this has, another folder we can get to over here in the file system. We can see it here. In Cloud9, you can't see that here. You can still kind of navigate to it with the Linux commands we've been messing around with. But all you need to know is that this folder here, this main folder that we have in Cloud9, is the same thing as the workspace folder here. And in fact, it works like that too. So if I type CD down here in Cloud9, and you can do this too, and hit enter, you'll see the prompt changes, and I'm inside of a folder called tilde. Okay, and we can't see that folder here, but that's the equivalent of this folder here. Okay, and then I can take this terminal, this command prompt, and I can jump into this folder here. And the way I do it is instead of writing this whole name here, I just have to type workspace. So CD space workspace. Remember, CD just means change directory. So I'm jumping in from the root directory, which we couldn't see, that tilde, into this folder here. And likewise, you can do the same thing here. You'll see the prompt says tilde, and you'll see me throughout the course say, let's jump into the workspace directory. So I'll type cd space workspace, like that. And I'll be inside of that. And then from there, I can jump in and go into other directories as well, like cd space blog. And you'll notice again the prompt changes, and it tells you exactly which folder you're in. Okay, so keep in mind, if you just type cd like that with nothing after it and hit enter, it'll take you right back to the root. Okay, and this works the same way in Cloud9. If you type cd and hit enter, you'll be taken right back to the root. Now, sometimes you'll see me go, 2 levels in all at the same time. You can do that by typing cd down here, space workspace, and then /blog, just like that. And there we go. I've just jumped all the way into this folder from the tilde folder. Okay? So I just want you to be aware of the differences there. It's just a name difference. This really just doubles for workspace. So in other words, you can imagine that instead of it saying coder manual Rails here, it actually just says workspace. Okay, so let's talk about the main difference that you do need to be aware of. And this is where you're going to need to take notes. I'll tell you exactly what you need to take note of. Okay, so throughout this course, you'll see me run this command called the Rails server command. Okay, so like I said, we're going to be building multiple Rails projects throughout this course. And you need a way to be able to preview that application as you build it, right? You want to kind of see the website you're building as you make progress on it. So you'll notice right now with this prompt, we're inside this blog folder, right? It says we're inside workspace and then blog. And if you look here, it's workspace, and then right here, the child of that parent folder right here, the first child, is blog. Okay, so that right there, when I open it up, that's a Rails application right there. That's kind of a skeleton Rails app. Now, you'll see me do this whenever we're working on an application and we want to preview it in the browser. We type out this command like this, bundle exec, and then Rails server. Sometimes you can just do S for short. It doesn't matter. Okay, so just like that, if I hit enter now, and you have to run that command from right inside your Rails app, whichever one it is. So in this case, I'm running it from right inside that blog folder, this folder here. Okay, it won't work if I were to run it straight from the workspace folder, because that's not a Rails app. It's just a bunch of other folders inside it. Okay, and you notice when I run that command, this changes here. Okay, you've got this kind of logging application is what it turns into. And you'll see me do this in the course. I'll click preview and then port 3000, and you'll see me come over here. Now, this is kind of the application itself. It's a skeleton blog. We'll build this out in the next few videos. Now, the point I'm trying to make, this all might seem daunting to you, but all I'm trying to say is that you're going to be typing this command out like that. But in Cloud9, since you're going to be using Cloud9 and no longer using Nitrous, what you have to do is just add a little bit to it. So I'll show you what to do, and this is what you need to take note of. Okay, so what I'm going to do is generate a random Rails application in here, just a skeleton one. You can do this with me. Okay, so let's type cd and hit enter, and that's what we know we're in the root directory, so that's one level up from this. We can't see it here. Okay, and I know that because it says tilde here. Now I'm going to jump into this folder, and again, imagine it's called workspace. So I'm going to type cd space workspace. Okay, so now I'm inside this folder, and there's nothing in there. That's why we can't unfold it. There's no arrow next to it. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is just type Rails new with a space there, and then I'm going to do test underscore app. Make sure you've got that spacing correct, and then hit enter. And give it a second. It just generated a Rails application inside of here. So just like the layout we've got here, we've got tilde, and then workspace, and then a bunch of applications in here, right? It's the same thing here. We've got tilde, which we can't see. It's the parent of all these folders. And inside it, it's got this folder, which is workspace, even though it says this. And then if we unfold that, you'll see there's our Rails application that we just generated here. And if you unfold that, you can actually see its contents. All it is just a bunch of files and folders. Okay, so now we have to do the same thing we did here. Okay, you're going to see me do this throughout the course, this Rails server command. So if we ever want to preview our work in Cloud9, you need to make sure you're inside the folder of the Rails app that you're working on. So since we're inside Workspace, we need to go in one level deep into this folder right here. So I'm going to do that by typing cd for change directory and then the folder name that I want to jump into. You'll see the prompt is changed, okay, and then I'm going to type out the command. So this is what you need to take note of. Write this down in your notes somewhere so that you can refer to this throughout the course. I'm going to type bundle exec and then Rails server, and again I could do S for short like that, but I'm going to just leave it all typed out for now. And then I'm going to do -p and then $, and then capital PORT like that, space -b, and then $IP. Okay, so this is what you need to just take note of. Write that down somewhere in your notes so that every time you see me do this command right here, okay, it's just the same command without the extra -p and all of that stuff. Whenever you see me do that in Cloud9, you just need to add in that little chunk right there, the -p and all that stuff. So write that down somewhere and keep it handy. That's the only difference that you need to be aware of between Cloud9 and Nitrous. Okay, now if I hit enter, you'll see there we go. It does the same thing. It turns it into a logging application and we can preview it. And the way we preview it is we just go up here in Cloud9, just like I did in Nitrous. I click preview, and it doesn't say port 3000 or anything like that. It just says preview running application. So I click that. And there you go. You get a nice little browser inside the browser. You'll notice with Nitrous, when I clicked this preview port 3000, it pops it up nice and easy for me in a separate browser tab. Well, the cool thing is in Cloud9, we can do the same thing. You'll see when I clicked preview and then I hit this preview running application, it loaded this little browser tab here. But I can just grab the URL itself and copy it. Okay, so Command-C on a Mac to copy, Control-C on Windows. And then I can just open another browser tab and paste it in. And there we go. This is kind of the skeleton homepage of a Rails app. I'm just going to drag that over right next to it just so that I have them right next to each other. So I'll be writing my code in here, and then I can just refresh this page anytime I want to see a change that I make. Okay, so that's the main difference that I wanted to point out for you, okay? Because throughout this course, since we used this version of Nitrous to film this course, you're going to see me run that command quite a bit anytime we want to preview our work. Right there, that command. All you need to do is append a little bit to it, as you saw here. Just add the -p and then the port and all that stuff, as you can see right here. So at this point, I just want to point out a few other cool features of Cloud9. And like I said in the previous video, you know, the tool that you use, whatever IDE it is, it doesn't really matter. You can use any tool that you're comfortable with. It's the skill of coding that is much more important, and that's what you should be really focused on. That's what you need to be productive with. You don't really need to know how to use all the latest tools and all of that stuff. What's more important is that you become a good coder. Okay, but just so you know, there are a lot of other IDEs out there like Cloud9. Like I said, the course was made with this version of Nitrous that's no longer available anymore. They're not supporting it after July of 2015. But there are other ones, and I just want to point them out to you. There's coding.com. It starts with a K, just like that. Okay, and this one's a really great IDE as well. So, you know, if you want to, feel free to jump in and mess around with it. And there's also others like Code Anywhere. And really just, you know, there's plenty of them out there. If you just look for them, you can just type, you know, Cloud IDE, and you'll see, you know, a bunch of different ones coming up in the Google search list. So again, the tool that you use is much more trivial compared to the actual skill of coding. So going back here to Cloud9, I just want to point out a few interfaces because this is the one I recommend that you use, especially if you're just starting out and you're not brave enough to go and you know want to spend hours and hours trying to set up a different IDE. Okay, so one thing that I want you to see here is that you can use these tabs. You can kind of drag them around, which is really cool. You couldn't do this with Nitrous, but you can do this in Cloud9. You can drag them around and move them into different areas, you know, just to have your, you know, workspace reorganized. Okay, and the other thing you should know is that to open a file, okay, inside this file system here, you have to double click it. Okay, so clicking once won't do the trick. You double click it, and there you go. You've got your code that you can start editing. Okay, so that's one thing you'll notice, and we'll go inside these folders. You have to hit the arrow keys to go to folders, but to get to any file, you just want to double click it and it'll pop right up. And again, the same deal, you can just drag it wherever you want, whatever's comfortable for you. Usually people leave the text editor, the code up in this upper section. You leave your console down here below, and then of course this kind of stays here. Okay, but another cool thing you can do is you can actually drag this tab and you'll see these little boxes highlight. Okay, and so that allows you to kind of split screen a little bit, and you can have your code editor as well as the kind of browser, the mini browser in here, and the terminal here. But like I said, you don't need to use this browser in here. It's better if you have it out, kind of in a separate browser tab, just like we set up moments ago. So I'm going to X that out by clicking the X right next to it here on the tab. Okay, so another cool thing that you want to maybe mess around with Cloud9 is you can go to the View menu item here, and then if you go down to Themes, you can actually play with different color themes, which is pretty cool. You can kind of hover over them to get it to preview the themes for you. So that's just kind of nice to have, if you want to mess around with different themes and you don't like the darkness. So another thing to keep in mind is that you'll want to close down your Rails server when you're not using it, okay? So if you're not messing around with it, or you don't need your app to be viewable at the address that Cloud9 gives you, all you have to do is go down here, click down inside your terminal here, the console, and just hit Control and C at the same time. So press down Control first and then press the C button. Okay, so Control and C, and you'll see it'll shut it down. It'll say exiting, and now the Rails server won't be operating. If I go over here now, where I was previewing my app, you'll see if I refresh the page, there you go. It says there's no application running here. Okay, so remember, and you'll see me do this throughout the course. We'll run that Rails server command, and we'll want to preview it in a separate browser tab. Okay, so just to demonstrate it one more time, you can actually hit your up arrow key from down here and scroll through previous commands. Up and down will allow you to scroll. So I'm going to hit up, and there's that command again. You want to write that down if you haven't written it down yet. That you just have to append this little part to the Rails server command every time you see me enter this into Nitrous. So I'm going to hit enter again just to demonstrate. You'll see now it's logging any browser activity, and we can always preview it just by typing or hitting this preview button. Preview the running application. Grab the URL here and put it into a new browser tab. So I copied that URL, paste it there, and hit enter. And then I like to just keep them right next to each other. And then you can kind of close out this mini browser if you don't want to be using it. Just like that. So now one more time, since I'm not going to be using this right now, I'm just going to close that out. And remember, we can shut down our server by typing Control-C down here. So Control-C, and you get the prompt back when it exits out of the server. Okay, so now one other thing that you'll notice is that throughout this course, you'll see code samples with each video. You can find some code samples that I provide with each video, just all the code that we write whenever we're building things out or practicing things. So you may want to copy and paste some of those codes. Most of the time, 99% of the time, when students run into errors in their projects that they're building in this course, it's because of a typo. It's really easy to make typos in programming. It happens to the best of us, so don't feel bad if it's happening to you. But that's where copying and pasting will come into handy. You can go in with the code samples that I provide, just copy them and paste them in, and that way you know for sure that there aren't any typos. Okay, and so just so you know, you can actually search in Google for Cloud9 and then keyboard shortcuts. Okay, and if you search that, you'll find the first result should be right here. It says docs.c9.io with all this stuff after it, and it's called key binding. So click on that. And again, if you can't find it, you may be able to get there with this URL. Their documentation will probably get updated over time, but hopefully you can kind of find their documentation website and then search for it you want to be looking for key bindings or keyboard shortcuts. And you'll see here they've got a list of keyboard shortcuts that you can look at to do really cool things. The main ones that I want to bring your attention to are just right here where it says clipboard. You'll want to do copying and pasting, and undoing. And you can do it all right here with these. If you have a Mac, you want to follow these. If you've got Windows, then you want to use these. Now, the last point I want to make is that throughout this course, you may make errors, like I said. In copying and pasting your code, going back through the code samples that I provide will help you to avoid some of those errors. But it's still really important that you write all of the code by hand yourself. You need to be getting muscle memory and practicing it out yourself. That's the fastest way to learn. But in case you run into any problems, you kind of have this worst case scenario that you can rely on. If you go back to your dashboard in Cloud 9, okay, and I did that just by clicking this little link here, or you can find it probably inside one of these file menus and such. You want to go back to your dashboard, and you can kind of go over here and click this tile. Don't click the open button itself, but just the tile of the workspace or box that you're using. And you can always delete it and just create a new one and then just get set up again, because the setup steps don't actually take that long. Okay, so you can hit this gear icon and you can find this little area where you can delete. You can also make your projects all private if you'd like. You just want to save it if you want to do that. I'm just going to leave it as public. And then right here, you want to click this delete button here if you want to start from scratch and just create yourself a new workspace. Or likewise, you don't even have to necessarily delete them. You can just go back and create a new workspace and start fresh again. You just want to make sure you select this Ruby Rails template here, not this one with the Ruby on Rails tutorial. You want to be using this one right here, and then come up with a name and just get started right away. So that's just a worst case scenario whenever you're having issues and you want to kind of maybe start over with your application. Finally, if you feel kind of lost or overwhelmed just based on some of the commands we were typing in here, that's okay. You're not expected to actually know what any of those commands were at this point. And you can always come back to this video. Just progress through for now, work through the next few videos, but you can always come back to this video and you'll be able to kind of see the main differences between Nitrous and Cloud 9. And like I said, the only real main difference you need to remember is appending that little snippet of code to the Rails server command.